There are two kinds of people in this world. Men of action.
What is the name of the source?
And everyone else.
It is my pleasure to introduce the only living recipient of the Intelligence Star, Evan Lake.
CIA has taken some hits. But we're on our feet again because our country needs us and because we've got what? Values.
NSA forwarded a hit on Banir.
He's alive.
Mohammed Banir is dead, Lake. Has been for 22 years.
It wasn't until the PET scan was complete that we could be sure.
What is it, 8 years and I'm dead?
Frontotemporal dementia is much more aggressive.
There's a concern that you could become a liability to the agency.
I'm a liability? Who put you up to this, huh? Who's got their hand in your pocket now?
You still have time left. Why waste it looking for someone who may not even exist?
He does exist. There is a window here. It won't be open long, and Banir will have gotten away with it.
I don't feel comfortable letting you go in there alone.
I'm not helpless.
It's his life, his choice, but no matter how this turns out, it will end badly for you.
We got him scared now.
He's been thinking about it for 20 years.
Depends. When you die.
If I'm not out in an hour, do whatever you want. Guys like that don't just die.
I am going to do something worth remembering.
All right, hello and welcome to The Complete Works, an in-depth look into the career and filmography of Nicolas Cage. My name is Mike Smith. Joining me, as always, on this journey into the depths of true Cagedom is my friend, co-host, and fellow Cageaholic,
Mike DeCriscio.
How you doing today, Mike?
I am excited to dive into yet another hidden gem of the Nick Cage filmography.
Yeah, hidden gem is definitely a word choice for sure.
That I've made.
That is, and you can't take it back now. It's there on the record on this podcast. Now, Mike, a lot can happen after a movie wraps filming and gets into post-production. No matter what you shot, I think most filmmakers will probably agree that a movie kind of lives or dies by its editing, which is why most filmmakers tend to have at least some hand in the editing process so that the final product can match their vision as closely as possible. This is the story of a movie that was taken away from its filmmaker during the editing process. That movie was called Dying of the Light, which is the movie that we watched today, just in case you forgot.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Yeah. Now, before we get into that, some backstory. The movie was written by Paul Schrader, known for writing several Martin Scorsese movies, including Bringing Out the Dead, which also starred Nicolas Cage way back in 1999.
Remember when movies were good?
Yeah, it was a different time, man. 1999.
Yeah.
That was actually, I mean, that was just a really good year for movies. But, yeah, that was also... and also a good time to be Nicolas Cage in movies. Good times.
Yeah.
And in 2010... Nicholas Winding Refn wound up getting attached to make this movie, Mike.
Wow. That would have been amazing.
Right? And on top of that, he had actually planned on having Harrison Ford star in the role that Nicolas Cage played.
Oh, wait, what?
And he was also set to cast Channing Tatum as his young CIA sidekick in the movie. So imagine this movie, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, starring Harrison Ford and Channing Tatum. Like, that's a completely different film.
What? That would be incredible.
I really wish we could see that version. Unfortunately, we will never know what it's like. Nicolas Winding Refn left the project a month later to go make Drive instead. And I'm glad we got Drive, because Drive is pretty amazing.
Yes.
But it's definitely something to think about. Like, this could have been a Refn movie. It's pretty wild. He did stay on as an executive producer, though, by the way. Just throwing that out there. So his name is still in the credits. And in 2013, it was decided that Paul Schrader would actually just direct the film himself. In addition to writing, he's had a fairly prolific career as a director, so the choice makes sense. He replaced Harrison Ford with our boy Nicolas Cage, and filming commenced in Romania in early 2014. So to the outside observer, things seem pretty fine. until October 16th, 2014, the day after the trailer for Dying of the Light premiered. Because on that day, Paul Schrader published a post to his Facebook page, which read like this. It said, "We lost the battle. Dying of the Light, a film I wrote and directed, was taken away from me, re-edited, scored, and mixed without my input. Yesterday, Grindstone, a division of Lionsgate, released the poster and the trailer. They are available online." Now, attached to this post is a picture of Paul Schrader, Nicolas Cage, Anton Yelchin, and Nicholas Winding Refn, all wearing T-shirts that have the non-disparagement clause of their contracts written on them.
Okay.
And so the post,
what might that clause mean?
I'll explain it because it comes up in the post, Mike. Let me finish, man.
Proceed.
It says, "Here we are, Nick Cage, Anton Yelchin, Nick Refn, and myself wearing our non-disparagement T-shirts. The non-disparagement clause in an artist contract gives the owners of the film the right to sue the artist should the owner deem anything the artist has said about the film to be derogatory. I have no comment on the film or others connected with the picture." So by posting this, and posting those guys wearing the non-disparagement clause in their contracts on their T-shirt, they're basically publicly protesting the film without actually saying that the movie is bad. Like, they're not saying derogatory things about it. They're just saying it was taken away from him in the edit, and that's the end of that. So we're publicly protesting it, but not saying so.
And they're legally not allowed to say it's bad. It's like, what's his name? Marshawn Lynch was just like I'm just here so I don't get fined press conference. That's what they did, basically.
It's exactly what that is. And the movie's cinematographer, Gabriel Koseth, eventually talked about some of what was altered in the film and discussed how the color significant cinematography had been digitally altered and dulled by the studio. So I guess there was a lot more visual that this movie was trying to go for, and the studio kind of tampered that down. And that's like the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of different things that the studio messed around with in this movie. So the movie came out on December 5th, 2014, 2 terrible reviews. It currently holds a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It got a small theatrical release and a VOD release simultaneously. A few years later, Paul Schrader revisited his first cut of the film and worked from DVD copies of the work print to create a rough cut that was closer to what he actually originally envisioned, though due to legal reasons, it can't be seen publicly. But it is available upon request at a couple of different film museums, such as the UCLA Film and Television Archive, and in 2018, he released it under the title Dark via BitTorrent on the Pirate Bay.
Whoa.
So theoretically, you could go torrent Paul Schrader's sort of original version of what this movie would be. And I'm thinking, maybe that happened in like 2017. Like, we might have to review that at some point. Like, I was thinking,
God, please don't put that on us.
I was just considering it, but that version is like 70 minutes long, and from what I understand, it's more interesting than what this movie actually is.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll play that one by ear. We'll see what happens.
See how we're feeling when we get to 2018.
Yeah, so Nicolas Cage plays the main character in this movie, an aging CIA agent named Evan Lake, who's battling the early stages of dementia, who's out for revenge against the terrorists who tortured him 22 years ago. His little CIA buddy, Milton Schultz, is played by Anton Yelchin, who most audiences would recognize as Chekhov in the rebooted Star Trek franchise, and of course who tragically died just a few years ago. In fact, there's a new documentary about Anton Yelchin called Love and Tosha, which just played at Sundance this past year, and Nicolas Cage actually serves as the narrator of that documentary.
Really?
Yeah, so we'll be talking about it one day on this podcast.
Interesting.
We'll see when that comes out. But from there, Irene Jacob plays Cage's old flame, Michelle Zubarian. She's known for her work with acclaimed filmmaker Krzysztof Kieslowski, like The Double Life of Veronique and Three Colors Red. Alexander Karim plays the terrorist Muhammad Banir, who also played a detainee in Zero Dark 30. His number 2, Mboy, is played by Adetomiwa Idun, who is known for playing the protagonist in the last few FIFA video games.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and he's also been on shows like Merlin and Bates Motel. And a couple of British character actors appear as doctors in the movie. Jeff Francis plays Dr. Claiborne, known for shows like Ashes to Ashes and Doctor Who. And I was pretty excited about this one. Silas Carson appears as Dr. Sanjar. He's the guy who played my favorite Jedi Master in the Star Wars prequels, Ki-Adi Mundi. Or as I used to call him, good old Egghead. He's the best. He actually also played another role in the prequel trilogy too. He was also Newt Gunray, one of the Green Schrade Federation dudes, who was most prominent in Phantom Menace, but is in all 3 movies. So he did a dual role in those movies. I didn't know that.
Wow, you learn something new every day.
Exactly. Thanks, Nicolas Cage podcast.
Yeah.
Now, the movie was written and directed by Paul Schrader 1 year after his previous film, The Canyons, which was written by Bret Easton Ellis and starred Lindsay Lohan. And from what I understand, that movie is supposed to be pretty terrible. And 2 years before his next film, Dog Eat Dog, which also starred Nicolas Cage. So we will talk about that movie one day. I've heard that one's actually pretty good. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. His most recent film was, of course, 2018's First Reformed, which is phenomenal. It made my top 10 list, and it got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. The movie's budget was $5 million, about $1 million of which was just Nicolas Cage's salary.
Wow.
Yeah, I would love to be able to boast that. Like a fifth of something's budget is going directly to me.
Just for me.
Just for me, man. And if you weren't seeing Dying of the Light on December 5th, 2014, well, it was a pretty quiet weekend at the box office. You could have seen The Pyramid, which is a horror movie which bombed and got bad reviews, or you could have seen Wild, the movie directed by Jean-Marc Vallée about Reese Witherspoon hiking and finding herself or something. I never saw it. Heard it was good, but I never saw the movie.
How dare you, Mike?
Have you seen Wild, Mike?
No.
All right, those in glass houses should not throw stones, or whatever the saying is.
Whoa. Hashtag deep.
Yeah, anyway, the IMDb plot synopsis for Dying of the Light reads, when a devastating illness threatens to end Evan Lake's career in the CIA, he goes rogue to hunt down a terrorist who tortured him during a mission gone awry years ago. So, Mike, we've talked about kind of what happened behind the scenes of this movie and how this movie was taken away from Paul Schrader in the editing room. What are your overall thoughts on Dying of the Light?
My overall thoughts on Dying of the Light is, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you explain what happened to this movie. It's just dumb and weird, and it feels like it probably had a point at some point in the process of this movie being made, and is just completely lost in whatever happened, whatever they did to this movie. And it's such a weird, why? I don't understand the thought process behind that. Would a studio just assume this movie's going to tank and we want to make it a different thing? Or, that's such a bizarre phenomenon. Yeah. And I know it's happened to plenty of people, right? I've heard of this kind of thing happening. And it really shows in Dying of the Light. It has this kind of nonsensical, aspect to it, right? I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of happening.
Yes.
It's very loosely connected scene to scene, and you could almost attempt to make it the movie reflects the mental state of the protagonist, but that's a stretch, I guess. As Cage's character's mental state deteriorates, so does the plot of the movie.
That would be giving this movie a lot of credit.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be giving it the Jurassic World treatment, where it's I don't think you really meant that. But okay, sure. Yeah, it's just a complete mess of a movie, basically, to sum it up.
Right, yeah, I would agree. I think Dying of the Light is pretty bad and pretty boring. But what makes it frustrating is, you can tell this movie was cut to pieces by the studio. It shows in the final product. And there are hints of a really interesting movie happening here. I think the premise of Cage, fighting dementia, trying to find this guy, pretty solid premise. And I think there are hints of a really interesting analysis of the U.S. war on terror and America's surveillance state. I mean, Paul Schrader is an angry dude, and I think his total contempt for the government was meant to come through in this movie, as it kind of did in First Reformed. There's a little bit of that in First Reformed as well. But in its current form, the movie never does that effectively, or it starts to introduce an idea and then completely ignores it. Just something somebody will say something incendiary, and then there will be no follow up to it, and it's oh, okay, great. That's not helpful. There's stuff that you could explore with that sentence you just said, but no, we're going to move on to the next thing.
New scene, completely new scene. Not
exactly.
Not even we're going to move this conversation to another point. We're in a different room, whole new situation.
Yeah, a lot of times that happens mid-sentence too. It's weird.
Bizarre.
But and the movie's premise is this: Cage is a guy fighting dementia who is hunting down a terrorist with a degenerative blood disease. And there's a lot you can say there about the futility and the pointlessness of that task. And every once in a while, the movie looks like it might swing in that direction. But it doesn't. And, as a result, the movie kind of plays it completely straight when you get to the end. And by the end, it's just two handicapped dudes on the ground trying to kill each other, and it looks weird. It looks goofy.
It does. It's very like pathetic, in like in a not good way. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Like there could have been a point to that. Like it could have looked pathetic deliberately, and I think potentially that might have been the case in the original script and how the movie was supposed to play it. But it does not. The final product does not play it deliberately pathetic. It's just it feels accidental. You know?
Yeah. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it.
All right. Sounds like Mike had some offensive thoughts, and we'll move on. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, let's just move on.
But in the end, I think the movie just kind of feels like a TV procedural that has it.
Wow. Yes. Sorry, you blew my mind. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. No. It feels like a TV procedural that has a premise that's like just vaguely interesting enough to get you to keep watching, but it's never like satisfying when it does. Yeah. You know, it's like it would be like a CBS procedural that has like, you know, one character who let's say has dementia, but just throwing it out hypothetically. But like it never has like that character actually dealing with the fact that he has dementia or the fact that like what he's doing is like ridiculous, and so it's just kind of there. It just kind of exists.
Yeah, it uses his Cage's dementia as like a prop for him to be angry about, and that's kind of it. Like throw in the book of like frontal lobe dementia symptoms at like shit. Like that's kind of it. Like that's his whole character trait, which literally happens at one point.
That happens multiple times in the movie.
Yeah, like, and that's kind of it. And it just does nothing with that. And I think that is such an, like you said, it would be such an interesting concept for, you know, a CIA agent, former like CIA operative, afflicted with this disease, with, you know, this handicap or whatever, and he's just struggling with it and going off the deep end. Like, is this, you know, personal vendetta worth it? Is this what he wants his life, like his legacy, to be about? And, you know, like you talked about the futility of all of this, and Paul Schrader's angry personality shining through. Instead, we get like the Lifetime drama version, like Lifetime channel version of this.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what did you think of Nicolas Cage in the movie, Mike?
I think he's probably doing the best he can with it. Well, I feel like for the most part, his character is convincing, you know, dealing with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the trauma that he went through, you know, we see the torture scene repeated a lot, when he was a young man and all that stuff.
Right.
But it just, everything feels so disjointed and so disconnected from one scene to the next that I can't really tell, like, what's going on. And as a result of that, it just feels like a flat, bad performance from Cage. But I feel like maybe if we had seen the original cut, or you know, this movie structured the way it was meant to be and all this stuff, it might have shined through a little more, Cage's performance, but the version we get, it's pretty weak. Everything's pretty bad.
I wouldn't say bad. I think, you know, despite everything, I think Cage is actually pretty good in this movie. And I was worried for a second, because as soon as I saw his hair, I was like, oh no, we're in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Cage has white hair in this movie, by the way. We haven't mentioned that yet. You know, it's weird. Cage is playing... He's playing somebody who's in his 50s, and Cage did like turn 50 right before making this movie. And so it's interesting that you know, it's dealing with a character who is dealing with dementia at a very young age for somebody to deal with dementia.
Evan Lake is a character that is not like anything I've done before, and that's always exciting, to have a challenge. I never want to get too comfortable. I always want to push myself into new directions and try to take chances, and I have to be totally honest, Evan Lake as a character terrified me, because it was it was a beast of a challenge. Being that he is someone who was in the Marines and for 6 years and in the CIA for another 30 years, this is a trained man. And that was always important to me, that strength still comes through, which of course makes the weaknesses even more tragic, that this is happening to somebody who's relatively young. I mean, he's 50. I mean, you think of people in their 80s for this sort of a situation.
So to see a character who is this young dealing with this kind of disease is interesting. But yeah, Cage has like the white wig, and it seems like he's playing a little bit older than he actually is. And so for a bit, I was like, that wig looks real bad. Like, I'm not sure I'm into this. And the movie starts off with this like big, rousing speech that Cage is giving to these CIA in training cadets or whatever. Right. And the speech is like very, I don't know, it's like that's a weird sequence because it keeps cutting back and forth from the speech to Cage being tortured. like mid-speech, right? It's like kind of like cutting back and forth, and it's like
a voiceover.
Yeah, and I just like that to me was like just whiplash, like right from the beginning. Like I felt like we needed like if you wanted to have the flashback first and then cut to the speech, or cut to the speech, like I don't know, the way it was just like cutting back and forth, like it did not work for me at all. But I think Cage overall is pretty good in the movie. I think he does the dementia episodes with some actual restraint, and I think that's to his credit. He actually is playing, anytime Cage's character is dealing with his dementia symptoms, he's like, his hands are shaking, or he's like kind of wandering around, or he loses sight of himself. Like, I think he does a pretty good job of it, and he's only really going big when a scene calls for it, and there are some big Cage moments in the movie, like that speech I mentioned before. But for the most part, I think he's actually doing a fairly like restrained job of depicting dementia. I think that's actually pretty admirable of him.
Yeah, there's definitely a version of this you could see. This is kind of the anti-answer to your next question. You could see him doing like a Matchstick Men version of this, where you play it for the comedic effect, right? That's like kind of the joke, like his neuroses in Matchstick Men,
right?
Is all these weird tics and stuff. But to play that in a movie about a CIA agent that's been tortured and has early onset dementia, and then do that would have been the worst possible decision. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it is important and interesting that Cage chooses to be restrained in that, where he definitely, we know he could have been big, very big with it, but he chooses not to be.
And I think the movie even plays with that for like a second. Towards the beginning, when Cage is like first diagnosed with dementia, one of the doctors says that the doctor says like Cage's condition might make him prone to overreactions, and I was like, yes, that's perfect, bring it on.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you're right.
But I did also really enjoy Cage's friendship with Anton Yelchin in the movie. I thought the two played off each other pretty well.
Yeah, Anton Yelchin, I mean, come on. He's great. He's Anton Yelchin. Like, come on.
Yeah, he was one of the greats. Absolutely. I think, he could have been, one of the, like somebody who became like a really great actor. He was already a really good actor.
Yeah.
And it's, what happened to him, I mean, the way he died was like the most tragic thing.
It's insane.
It was ridiculous, and I'm really looking forward to the documentary about Anton Yelchin, which again is called Love and Tasha, and I don't know when it will be released, but it did just play Sundance. But I think the two of those guys, Anton Yelchin and Nicolas Cage, I think there is a reason that Nicolas Cage is the narrator of that movie. Like, I'm assuming there was some kind of bond between them after the filming of this movie.
Anton Yelchin is terrific. I really enjoy that I got to do this movie with him. He's the ultimate cinematic friend, and he's also a badass. It's a marvelous character that he's developed. He's the most you never know when he's going to bring out the other side where he could really kill somebody, but at the same time he has genuine empathy and affinity and care for Evan Lake, and it's a delicate balance, and he's doing it brilliantly.
Yeah, it's interesting too. We've talked about previously this kind of shift that Cage has had throughout his career, where previously he was starring in movies with Sean Connery, and like all he was the hot young guy in the movies with the big actors, and now at this point in his career, I don't know if this is a movie that you would hold up as one of these kind of teaching moments for Anton Yelchin, but where Cage is playing the older role with the younger hot new actor, even Chloe Grace Moretz in Hit Girl, or as Hit Girl in Kick-Ass. Yeah. Those moments. It's just interesting to see his career progress that way.
Yeah, it's definitely like he's played like both sides of that relationship at this point, and it's kind of cool. Also part of Cage's performance, I did want to just bring this up real quick. There is one like very unfortunate moment where Cage puts on a German accent in like a very serious scene.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
It is very goofy. It's just like, it's not like it's offensive or anything. It's just weird and bad.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked about Cage's voice choice in a movie.
That's true.
This is one of them.
Yes, this is definitely one of those choices. Now, how does this role fit into the roles that we've seen Nicolas Cage play so far, Mike? What do you think?
He's back on that kind of spy action type thing going on.
Sure.
And, I say that as if I had a movie in mind, but I feel like just kind of like as a general career path, I feel like that most of what he used to do, and I just like as a general sense.
Sure. I can't think of anything where he was like a CIA agent. Or actually, you know what? Guarding Tess, he was Secret Service.
Aha, I tricked you to figuring that out for me.
So somewhat close. Otherwise, I can't think of any like big government job that Cage has had in a movie yet up to this point. I did also have Matchstick Men written down, which you referenced before, because I think Cage's performance here has like shades of his performance in Matchstick Men, just a similar kind of character where his character is battling a disease. But you're right. In that movie, it's played a little bit more comedically, although there's still like dramatic tension with his performance in that movie too.
Yes.
But there is like comedic moments as well, and this one doesn't really have that as much in regards to his disease. There are some comedic bits throughout this movie, but they're not really in relation to his dementia.
Yes,
I will also say that a lot of the movie, especially towards the beginning, reminded me of Lord of War. And I think the original cut of this movie was meant to be like a much more biting indictment of the U.S. government in the vein of Lord of War. Like some of there's similar sentiments being said, like where Cage is like talking about the CIA and like the fuck ups and everything that they've been up to and like all that. And like there's similar stuff, like similar territory that's being tread between these two movies. For like a minute, and then this movie forgets about it. But like,
and then the studio was like, no, we shan't be doing that. I don't know why they talk that way, but
right. Well, because they're a big studio and they talk like fancy billionaires. That's
they lit their cigar with $1,000 bill, and then cut the next scene out.
They actually they lit their cigar with the film that this movie was filmed on, and then whatever was left, that's what they put in the movie.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, and this is it turns into this kind of like shitty thriller, which we have seen a lot lately. I wouldn't go so far as Trespass. Well, no. What's the one we just watched? Oh my god.
Rage,
maybe. No.
It's not Rage.
It's probably Rage.
Left Behind?
Yeah. Not Left Behind. I was thinking,
Seeking Justice?
Seeking Justice, Stolen.
They're all the same movie.
They're all the same movie. Rage was the one that had the phrase "seeks his own justice" in the
IMDb synopsis. Yeah,
in the synopsis. Yeah, but it feels much more like it's a shame that we've said it a bunch of times where you can tell that this had a point at some point in the process. This film, and it was turned into one of these dumb, gritty thriller things.
Yeah.
That Cage has been in a bunch at this point in his career.
Right. Hey, speaking of Rage, did you know that despite starring in Rage, he is still just Nicolas Cage?
I've heard that a couple times.
A couple of times. Yeah, I was considering getting Kyle to write a song for this episode as well, to the tune of "Blinded by the Light," and it would be like "Dying of the Light."
You say that like it's not possible.
Well, I think it's too late at this point. I thought about it like a half hour before recording, and I was like, man, that would have been good.
You need like a direct red phone, like a bat phone, to Kyle.
Yes. So, Kyle, if you're listening to this like 2 days from now, if you want to do a belated "Dying of the Light" song, totally fine. I'm down.
By all means.
So let's talk about some of the moments or scenes that stood out to you in the movie, Mike. Was there anything?
Well, the torture scene, just in general, and even the way that is structured, like you said, it's the flashbacks and we're cutting back and forth, and then it happens a few times where they add to it, like we see longer and longer versions of it, and it just becomes much more it just keeps getting more and more nonsensical. And then, but really, the scene I think the most that stood out to me was that scene you have already referenced, where the CIA director and a psychologist or doctor, I don't even know who that other guy was. We never really get an
that was Ki-Adi-Mundi from Star Wars.
Well, but I mean, his character. I don't know.
Yeah, no, his character was Ki-Adi-Mundi from Star Wars. You didn't notice the gigantic egg-shaped head that he had?
I must have missed it, But that scene in the office where Cage has that freak out, right? Where I don't mean to use that Cage freak out phrase because it's not quite the level of what that
usually
implies.
entails. Yeah.
But his character has a moment where he's yelling at these guys about criticizing the CIA for all the fuck ups they've done, and there's the line, like, you've got your head so far up Obama's ass you can't see nothing but shit anymore, or something, which is amazing. Like,
that's a great line, yeah.
That is some angry Paul Schrader shit, and I loved
Absolutely.
it.
There is a concern that you could become a liability to the agency.
Fuck you.
Calm down.
I'm a liability? You fucked this up just like you fucked up everything else. Fucked up Iran-Contra, fucked up Ames, fucked up 9/11, fucked up WMD, Afghanistan, Iraq, Benghazi. Not you yourself, of course, no. No, you're just the latest in a long line of fuck-ups who turned this agency into a cesspool of politics and special interests on behalf of the weapons makers and the surveillance industry who get richer while we get weaker.
Mr. Lake.
I've forgotten more about this agency than you'll ever know. Who put you up to this, huh? Who's got their hand in your pocket now? I've seen a million people like you. A million people. You got your head so far up Obama's ass, you can't see anything except his shit anymore. Shame on you. Shame on you.
But it just feels so neutered by the rest of the movie.
Yes. Yeah, that's like the one scene where I was like, I watched that and I was like, okay, if the rest of the movie can live up to this, like, this could be something. There is something here. I was into that, like that whole tirade. It's like, you fucked up Iran-Contra, and you fucked up 9/11, you fucked up Benghazi. And he's going through this whole thing. It's like, I'm a liability, you're a fucking liability, and all that. Like, give me that movie. That was the movie I wanted to watch. Like, I don't necessarily, like, the way this movie plays it, I don't necessarily care about Cage's, like, quest for vengeance against the terrorists. I think if he was, like, you know, if he became a crusader speaking against the CIA or something, and that was the plot of the movie, could have been great. Like, that could have been really cool. Which is a lot of what First Reformed has, too. I think First Reformed has a lot of that questioning authority, questioning the government, questioning organized religion. And that movie is incredible. Did you see First Reformed yet, Mike?
No, I haven't.
You gotta watch it. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now.
Yeah, I really need to. There's a moment. There's a interview with Paul Schrader in this like writers' roundtable thing, where he kind of goes off on this tirade, or not tirade, but explanation about how he's like, we've made our decision as a species, and we all know where this is going to end. So I'm just doing my part to say what I think about it. And it's like, whoa, dude, I need to watch this movie. It seems very scary.
Yeah, it is. It is disheartening for sure, but it's well worth a watch. But yeah, I think if Schrader's original cut of the movie was more of that scene, then like, damn, I wish that could have been the movie. Like, I wish we could have seen that. You know?
Yeah, I think having this kind of like this kind of like hero's quest for Cage to get this revenge, but tragic downfall or whatever you want to call it, like. Where we know he knows it's useless, but he's still got to do it anyway for some reason.
Yeah.
But at the same time, criticizing everything that it's about could have been much more interesting instead of Cage yelling, "I'm in Romania, the whole fucking country's a smoking section." Okay.
Well, to be fair, I liked that scene.
I mean, that was great. It just makes no sense.
Just because it was like ridiculous. Like it was, basically that's when Cage is meeting up with his old flame.
Right.
And that's something that, like, Anthony Elton teases him about, like, oh, is it an old flame? And Cage's like, and then she is. But they're in the restaurant together, and Cage is smoking, and the waiter comes up to him and is like, oh, excuse me, sir, this is the non-smoking section. And Cage kind of snaps at him and is like, last time I checked, this is, and he like looks at his matchbook. It's like, Romania, whole fucking country's a smoking section. And he tosses a cigarette in the water. It's just like a weird, a weird moment that didn't need to be there, but at the same time, it was like, I was happy it was there. It was just very odd.
We know he's prone to overreacting.
Exactly.
As the movie has told us.
Yes, so it's definitely, it could be part of that too. But there is that part of the scene. Then there's the second part of that scene where Cage kind of rekindles his old flame with this woman. And I think their kiss is like one of the most awkward movie kisses I've seen in a very long time. It's just like complete, like it's over the table and like it's very weird. It does not work at all.
No, it's just not. He's not selling it. I don't know if the white hair is helping either.
That might be part of it too.
Just no.
You're not into Silver Fox Cage? That's not a thing you're into.
I feel like in the right circumstance, could have been.
Yeah.
Not so much in Dying of the Light.
Yeah, I did also like. Speaking of restaurant scenes in the movie, I did like towards the beginning when Cage like, I'm at Ruby Tuesdays.
I forgot about that.
Just a weird Ruby Tuesdays like product placement out of nowhere, like.
Yeah. But I do like Anton Yelchin's reactions, like, you're at Ruby Tuesdays? Like, can't believe anyone would end up there.
Yes.
Bizarre.
But anyway, so the movie kind of continues, and it kind of builds up to Cage finally confronting this terrorist that has eluded him for 22 years. And he infiltrates his way into the terrorist lair using a fake beard.
Yes.
Like, that's literally what it does. It's a cartoon, basically, at that point. He just puts on, like, a fake beard and a German accent, and he's like, I'm a doctor. Like, that's...
I mean, he pulls a Mission Impossible.
Yeah. Well, at least
puts on a mask.
Yeah, well, Mission Impossible is, like, a full, like, face mask, though. Here, it's like, it's still Cage's face. He just has, like, a beard on. And that's...
It would have been better if it was the Groucho Marx glasses with the mustache.
That would have been incredible. I would have given this movie 5 stars if that's what happened. But then the terrorist Benir discovers who he is, because it's not that hard, and Cage isn't really hiding it that much anyway.
I think he reveals it by then.
Well, yeah, he reveals it, and the way he gets the other guy out of the room is pretty funny. He's like, "Hey, there's a problem with the toilets," the old toilet gag, and then he knocks it out. But then he comes back into the room, and then Benir discovers who he is, and then. Like, neither of them do anything. Like, they didn't do anything about it. And then Cage just leaves. And then after that, Benir organizes a shootout and probably kills a few people in the process. And Anton Yelchin gets shot in that process as well. So then when that happens, Cage goes back and finishes the job and kills him by poking his eye out. Which, again, seriously, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. But, that whole thing took place, and it's like, couldn't you just have poked his eye out like 10 minutes earlier? And we could have skipped the shootout or something. It's like it felt like the events were happening out of order to me. That shootout should have happened before Cage had reached the terrorist organization, the lair or whatever. And instead, like, he's in the lair and he's like, "Okay, goodbye," and then and then the shootout happens, and then he comes back and then he kills him. And it's like there was a more streamlined way this could have happened.
And that's like. Unfortunately, this movie makes that, terrorist attack, effectively, or attempted assassination, or whatever is happening there.
Right.
Hilarious? I hesitate to say that. Because the movie, right, Cage goes to Benir, right, that was his name, that character's, like you said, they have that discussion, and they kind of have this big, moment where Cage starts having flashbacks to the torture scene, and Benir is talking about how he's lost his faith in the jihad, and it's all pointless, and it has glimpses of that, criticism, social criticism stuff that Schrader does. And they kind of agree, we're both old men dying, although they're both actually young men dying of diseases and stuff, and forget it, bygones be bygones kind of thing, right? It has that sort of feel.
Yeah, there's a little bit of we're not so different, you and I.
Yeah, exactly. We're both complicit in this system or whatever. Yeah. And they leave, they part, and then it's kind of having, the music starts to swell, and Cage is talking about, when I retire, I want to start doing this stuff, and, they're kind of having this, him and Anton Yelchin are having this kind of, when we get back to the States, golly gee, talk. And then, just gunshots erupt and people start dying. And, Anton Yelchin dies mid-sentence or gets shot.
He gets shot. I thought he died, and then they show him alive, the next scene.
Yeah. Turns out he's alive.
Yeah.
So it comes out of nowhere, and then Cage just gets shot and keeps sprinting and kills a guy, and then gets in a car and drives to Benir's and pokes his eye out. And, it just...
It sounds so silly.
It is, though.
It is.
It's so dumb. It comes out of nowhere. It's definitely the movie is starting to resolve. And then they're like, haha, what's a twist? And no, it's a shootout. And it's what the fuck is going on with this movie?
And I think that's part of the problem, too, is you have that scene where they do the "You're Not So Different, You and I" scene or whatever. And they have that kind of moment where they realize, the institutions they're a part of are, corrupt and wrong and all that stuff, and they have that kind of moment where they realize how complicit they are in their own systems. And it seems like that would have been a good note for the movie to end on, and something that you could chew on over time. But then the shootout happens, and then it kind of just becomes okay, we got to avenge the death of these people for America, and he rushes to it becomes a patriotic thing where he kills the terrorists all of a sudden, and then the movie ends with Cage dying. And you see, and it starts playing his speech from the beginning of the movie over the shots of the graveyard and then onto Cage's grave. And so Cage's speech at the beginning, where he's talking to the recruits, he's like, and the CIA has values and stuff like that. And it's it suddenly becomes very
jingoistic.
Like jingoistic is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I don't think that's the intention that Schrader was going for in this movie. Like, it just doesn't seem like it jives with his political worldview or his body of work, or indeed the beginning of this movie.
The scenes preceding it. Yeah,
exactly. It comes out of nowhere. It's very weird.
What the hell are you doing here? Haven't you heard? The CIA fell from the Berlin Wall, and all the president's men can't put it back together again. It's broke. Not reliable, not trustworthy, can't stand up to the White House. Backstabbers. Watching porn, tapping phones. Best and brightest, quit or retired. What in the name of Jesus Christ nailed to the cross are you doing here? Because you heard the call. That's why. Your future spread out before you like a cruise ship buffet. You were teaching in a classroom, working in a kitchen, training in a gym, and you heard the call. For some, it was adventure. For some, mystique. For all, it was 9/11, and you heard the call, and it was the call of duty and love of country. Why? Because you have values.
And then it always, they think do that thing that Kiss Kiss Bang Bang did that ruined forever. Is like, yeah, sure, everyone come back. You're all still alive. Somehow Aunt Yelchin's alive.
Yeah. He got shot in the heart. I'm pretty sure. He was down immediately. And even in that scene, like you mentioned, Cage gets shot. He also gets shot I think probably just above the heart, in the shoulder area, I think is where he gets shot. So theoretically, he could still keep moving, but he shouldn't be.
Doesn't even flinch. Basically.
He doesn't even flinch. He just keeps moving, and it's this is a dude in his 50s who is suffering from dementia and has the shakes all the time. He's not gonna not feel pain,
Maybe, according to the rules of this movie, he's possibly only one eye poke away from death, and he survives a gunshot.
Yeah. I mean, the eye poke thing, that was so weird.
And it's so slow and deliberate. Cage lifts his finger straight and then goes straight down. It's bizarre.
He's savoring the eye poke as it's happening. It's very strange. But yeah, that's the ending of the movie. I also want to give a special shout out to Cage's big winter hat, which which looks like the warmest and silliest hat of all time. I want that hat for myself. It's up there with Jane's hat and Firefly. Do you ever?
I feel like I don't know it. Oh wait, is that the orange one?
Yeah, the orange floppy eared hat and Firefly.
Yeah.
It's this one doesn't have the color of that hat, which is a very significant part of it. But it just looks as warm and comfy, and I want it.
Yeah.
So
he's just trying to stay warm.
Anyway, I feel like this movie broke me.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about Dying of the Light you want to reference, Mike, or should we move on to reviews?
No, I think we can move on. Actually, the one character detail that I thought was bizarre. So when he rekindles that old flame, he's got his bullet on a keychain, and the old flame is oh, he wanted to melt that down into a ring for me to wear. What
right.
the fuck? I don't know. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, and then Anthony Yelchin's ooh, I'll leave you two to it. And then he scampers away. There's so many characters in this movie. There's a lot of characters in this movie, and I don't think I can tell you what 90% of them we're doing in this movie.
Not at all.
Up to and including the old flame character, played by Irene Jacob. It's just an odd choice all around. And yeah, it does seem like there are a lot of good ideas in this movie, and I wish they could have been more fully explored in the actual cut of the movie that should have been made, but it wasn't. And so we have this movie instead.
And just thanks, I guess, for that.
Yeah, thanks, studios. Great job. All right, let's move on to some Letterboxd reviews for Dying of the Light. Mike, got a few of them here. Here's a half-star review of Dying of the Light, which reads, Nicolas Cage randomly stops to smell a plant during a walking and talking style scene, and it's never commented on.
I don't remember that at all.
That's all I got. Yeah, I don't remember that either, actually, but that sounds like something that would happen in this movie.
Yeah.
Here's a 1-star review of Dying of the Light, which reads, could this be a worse 2014 Nick Cage film than Left Behind? Short answer, no. Reasons. Nick Cage to Romanian waiter. No smoking station, where am I? Looks at matchbook. Romania, the whole goddamn country's a smoking station. This may be the best response to being told not to smoke of all time. Nick Cage to his boss. You got your head so far up Obama's ass and all you can see is the shit. For those 2 quotes alone, this is better than Left Behind and a lot of movies. Holy shit, Nick Cage's kiss with Irene Jacob looks like something out of David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Oh, God.
He looks completely bizarre throughout. This is far better edited and much more coherent than Schrader's recent The Canyons. He should get the studio to take more movies out of his hands.
Oh, no.
That was a pretty good burn, but
that is.
It's pretty solid. Here's a 2-star review of Dying of the Light. Dying of the Light starts out with Nick Cage getting the shit kicked out of him by Kenyan terrorists. Cut to 22 years later, and Nick Cage is now some drunken CIA dude obsessed with getting revenge on the Kenyan terrorist leader who he learned has some life-threatening disease. Coincidentally, Nick Cage also has some life-threatening disease, so time is of the essence. Nick Cage then goes incognito as Colonel Sanders and heads to Kenya. This is the general premise of Paul Schrader's comedy masterpiece, Dying of the Light. Funniest movie of 2014.
Shots fired.
And once I read that review that he looked like Colonel Sanders, I could not unsee that, by the way.
Nope.
That was 100% that's what it looks like. Here's a 2-star review, Dying of the Light. Why did I watch this? I guess if Nicolas Cage can make these straight-to-DVD movies, the least I can do is watch them.
Wow.
That's the whole review, and that sounds like so dejected to me. But also, I empathize a lot with it because that's kind of the idea behind this podcast.
Yeah, we're just doing our part as audience members.
Exactly. Here's a 1-star review of Dying of the Light. It's like an episode of Showtime's Homeland done by CBS.
Wow. Holy shit.
So safe and nonsensical. It's too bad because the actors here are really trying, including Cage. A better movie would have been a documentary on the decline of Paul Schrader's career. What happened to that guy? By the way, this was written in 2015, so this is before First Reformed came out.
Okay.
I understand the final product was ripped from his hands and re-edited, but that doesn't excuse the awful dialogue written by Schrader. I seriously don't know what producer Nicholas Winding Refn saw in this story. I knew the movie was shit when Cage's character at one point says he went to Colorado State College. He called Greeley a paradise. Anybody from Colorado knows Greeley is a shithole.
What a personal touch to that review.
Yeah, it sounds like he's either from Greeley or he has very strong feelings against Greeley.
Yeah.
Here's a 2.5-star review, which starts off with that Obama quote once again, and then it says, "A Tale of Two Movies. Paul Schrader's jittering, clenched fist post-mortem of the War on Terror, slashed apart and repurposed into an anesthetized and dependably twist-free episode of Homeland. Flickering shadows of a wilder, more unconventional film haunt the studio cut, and one gets the impression that Schrader intended this as a funkier and far more cutting post-Bush commentary, a snarling indictment of institutional erosion that makes visible the physical and psychic toll of ideological warfare. But in its current compromised form, Schrader is treated like a werewolf in mid-transformation, strangled by a magic talisman, carnivorous, frothing at the mouth, but too restrained to really swipe his claws and take down his targets." Thankfully, the same could not be said for Nicolas Cage, who seems to be groping towards new Herzogian heights as he annihilates each word and gesture and cackle with a snarling, shambolic disregard for naturalism, a rare source of pleasure in an otherwise listless and lethargic film.
That person's an incredible writer. Holy shit.
That's some good shit, yeah. Okay, finally I got one more here on the Letterboxd reviews, and I thought this one was interesting because it's actually a review of Dark, the recut of the movie. This afternoon I schlepped over to the Harry Ransom Center at UT Austin to catch Schrader's oddball recut of this movie, Dark. Discernibly the same movie shaved down to 70 minutes, Schrader and his editor start from a work print, mixing in elements from an HD rip of the existing version, and in the wildest choice, footage played back from a television. The center does not hold, untethering the narrative as Cage's cognitive state rapidly deteriorates. Betrayed by their bodies, Cage and his nemesis persist due to their mutual obsessions, both true believers. And here, Schrader's persistence of vision coalesces into a liminal space between refutation of studio interference and piean to reconstruction. And that makes the recut of this movie sound pretty interesting, Mike. So I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe we'll review it at some point.
Yeah, that actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah. So, and plus, it's only like 70 minutes. So maybe it could be like a bonus episode or something.
Yeah.
At some point, whenever we get around to that. But anyway, that wraps up our discussion of Dying of the Light, Mike. So overall, not a very good movie. Definitely interesting. In terms of like how badly a movie can get fucked up in the post-production process. But it's not very good overall, which is unfortunate because there was a lot of promising stuff here.
Yeah, it will be interesting, I guess, potentially to watch Dark, the recut. But you can. It's also like absolutely heartbreaking that you can get glimpses of the Paul Schrader version. I don't know if that would have been any good either, but you could see that there was a vision here that just got totally destroyed.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mike, so where can we find you online this week?
You can find me at MD Filmblog on Twitter.
And you can find me at MSmithFilmBlog on Twitter, all of our podcasts and stuff at FilmBook.com. Thank you so much for listening to The Complete Works. I'm Mike Smith. That's Mike DeCriscio. If you're listening on iTunes, or even if you're not, make sure to rate and review us. 5 stars would be great, and tell people you know about the show if you can. And if you want to contact us, you can do so by emailing NicolasCageCompleteWorks@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Now join us for the next Complete Works, where Nick Cage enters 2015 by teaming up with Anakin Skywalker for a movie meant to cater heavily to the Chinese market, Outcast. I have one friend who has been very excited for us to get to this movie, so I can't wait to finally talk about it. Plus, keep an eye out for Film Bookcast, where we'll be talking Alita, Battle Angel, which I have seen, by the way, and shockingly, I thought was fucking rad.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm as surprised as anybody, by the way, about that. So we'll be talking about that next week. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and thanks for getting in the cage.